Let me apologise in advance for using a really shameful pun, but the blend tool is amazing. So that's why I have a picture here of a maze. You'll notice that I have two copies. I know it's a terrible pun. Two copies of the maze, one on top and one on the bottom. If you want to follow along, you can open this too. It's Blend Maze Start, which you can find in the Shapes folder. And you can select both those shapes by shift-clicking them in the Layers panel on the Target button. If you haven't got your Layers panel showing, you could go to the Window menu and choose Layers from that list. Once you have them selected, you can go to the Object menu and into the Blend section and choose Make. And that's going to make a blend for me, and it creates this fantastic kind of 3D effect. Now I can go into the Object menu and go back into Blend and go into Blend Options, and I can choose in there some specific options on how Illustrator blends the shapes. At the moment it's choosing Smooth Colour, and if I go to Specified Steps, you'll see it defaults to 235 steps, which gives me a lot of detail, but you'll notice it takes a little bit of time to update. If I change that to something like 75 and click on Preview, you'll be able to see that even at 75 it creates a really nice blend. Notice that it's not just blending the shapes, moving the shapes up and down, but also blending the colour. It's going from white to dark and blending the colours in between those 2 points. Now let's have a look at other things we can do with the Blend tool. If you open up Blend Skull Start AI, in here I have a few shapes. And what we're going to do is blend them not by using the menu, but by using the tool. Now if I select these two shapes here, these two star shapes I've created, I can go to the Blend tool and click on it, and just click on the star, and then click on the background star, and it will blend between those two shapes. Now if I double click, I can choose, do I want smooth colour? Do I want maybe just 3 steps? And if I preview, I can see that update. So great for creating kind of 70s graphics. Now, if I cancel that and come out and undo my blend, so go to Edit, Undo, Command Z, Control Z on Windows. So we'll undo Make Blend. Instead of actually clicking on the shape, I can also click on an anchor point. And if I click on an anchor point, so if I select one of the stars and maybe just rotate it a little, so let's just select the red one, and let's rotate it just a little bit. And instead of just doing a blend between one shape and another, I could do a blend between one point and another. I click on one point, and then click on another point. And when it turns black, that indicates that I'm clicking on a point. I can get this kind of twisty effect where it's going from one point to another. And again, if I double click the tool and choose Specified Steps, and we'll put 3 steps in again, preview it, you'll see I can get this effect of the star twisting around. Now I can even go in and select the star and maybe move it before I do the blend. Let's have a look at that. So we'll undo a couple of steps. I'm going to move this star up to here, and then select the blend tool, and we'll select the top point when it goes black, and the top point on here when it goes black, and we create that kind of effect. Now if I decide instead to click on that point and then that point, I get a completely different result. So you'll see it actually determines whether it goes from here to here or here to here. If you just click on the actual shape itself, it will just do the nearest point basically. And if I double click that and put steps on, let's put 10 steps, preview it, you'll see we get a much nicer result. Now you can also say specified distance as well. So we could maybe increase the distance between those, and we start to get a really nice effect determined by the distance between the layers. So obviously if we give it more distance, it has to use less layers, if you like, or less instances. So if I now hold down the modifier key, Command or Control on Windows, and select these two shapes, so holding down Shift as I select them, again I can go into my blend tool, and if I want to, I can determine the settings before I create the blend. So I could maybe do 10 steps, click OK, and then click on these to create a blend, and it will create 10 steps in between. Now you'll notice there's a path going from one side to the other. I can actually select that path and make changes to it. So if I select something like the Convert Vertex tool, or Convert Anchor tool rather, I can click and drag and create a shape for this. So I can start to create like a kind of worm or something. Now, if I'd selected the first path and gone into isolation mode, then what I can do is just make that a little bit bigger, and it updates the blend as well. So I think, again, another great use of isolation mode, being able to scale things up or down over time. And it's starting to look a bit odd there, so I'm going to scale it down again. Similarly, I can do the same to the smaller one, so scale that all the way down. And we start to get blends being adjusted in isolation mode, which is a really useful technique. Now, I can also select this and create a blend from it. If I Alt-click and drag to create another copy, and then just go into blend, I can use it to create maybe 3 or 4 copies to create something like a fence. So I might not want it to be particularly looking like it's blending. I might just want it to create instances of the same thing if I want to create a fence or something like that. Now, if we double click it again, you can also specify the orientations. If I leave it on that orientation and I select the Convert Anchor Point tool and just create a curve, notice that these remain perpendicular to the bottom of my document. But if we go in here and double click the tool and click on the orientation button and preview it, you'll see now it orientates them along the path. And if I now select my selection tool and make changes to that path, it updates the way that they're aligned depending on how I click and drag the path. So if I just put a slight curve in, I get a kind of better result. So a lot of control there. Now, if we double click on artboard 1, if you can't see your artboards, just open up your artboards. One way of creating a more three-dimensional look for my skull that I'm working on would be to use the blend tool on that. So select the blend tool, click on this skull, click on that skull, and it creates a blend between them. And of course, if I go in and choose smooth color, I tend to get a really nice result like that. So for making my skull look more three-dimensional, and also the bones, it really is fantastic. So I use it quite a lot. Now, you have to make sure, if you've created a blend and then you want to go and create another blend, you obviously need to deselect this one before you go and create the other one. Otherwise, you're going to join them together like I just did there. So I just deselect and then do this one. And I now have my little more 3D looking skull and crossbones. If we open it up, I can switch on the eyes and the nose as well. So it's great for creating a 3D look for your artwork using blends.